Greetings. My name is Anthony Kaufman, and I am a CSA associate living in the Tampa Bay, Florida area. Today, I wanted to reflect on a parable of Jesus that is special to me, the prodigal son. I gained a greater appreciation for this parable after reading two books, Return of the Prodigal Son by Henri Nouwen and Prodigal God by Timothy Keller. I even have a copy of Rembrandt's painting of this parable hanging in my home. During our time today, I invite you to first listen to the parable, and in subsequent readings, listen as the younger son, then as the elder son, and finally as the father. I will share what resonated with me based on my readings of the parable and the books written by Nouwen and Keller. And now, the prodigal son, from Luke 15, verses 11 through 32. A man had two sons. The younger of them said to his father, "Father, give me the share of the estate that is coming to me." And so he divided his wealth between them. And not many days later, the younger son gathered everything together and went on a journey to a distant country. And there he squandered his estate in wild living. Now when he had spent everything, a severe famine occurred in that country, and he began doing without. So he went and hired himself out to one of the citizens of that country, and he sent him into his fields to feed pigs. And he longed to have his fill of the carob pods the pigs were eating, and no one was giving him anything. But when he came to his senses, he said, "How many of my father's hired laborers have more than enough bread, but I am dying here from hunger? I will set out and go to my father, and will say to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and in your sight. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me as one of your hired laborers.' So he set out and came to his father. But when he was still a long way off, his father saw him and felt compassion for him, and ran and embraced him and kissed him. And the son said to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and in your sight. I am no longer worthy to be called your son.' But the father said to his slaves, 'Quickly bring out the best robe and put it on him, and put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. And bring the fattened calf, slaughter it, and let's eat and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and has come to life again. He was lost and has been found.' And they began to celebrate. Now his older son was in the field, and when he came and approached the house, he heard music and dancing. And he summoned one of the servants and began inquiring what these things could be. And he said to him, 'Your brother has come, and your father has slaughtered the fattened calf, because he has received him back safe and sound.' But he became angry and was not willing to go in. And his father came out and began pleading with him. But he answered and said to his father, 'Look, for so many years I have been serving you, and I have never neglected a command of yours. And yet you never gave me a young goat, so that I might celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours came, who has devoured your wealth with prostitutes, you slaughtered the fattened calf for him.' And he said to him, 'Son, you have always been with me, and all that is mine is yours. But we had to celebrate and rejoice, because this brother of yours was dead and has begun to live, and was lost and has been found.'" Some context is this parable was the third of three parables shared by Jesus in front of two groups, one consisting of Pharisees and scribes, while the other were sinners and tax collectors. The religious leaders began to complain and comment about how Jesus not only welcomed sinners, but even ate with them, an action Keller describes as a token of acceptance. This encourages me never to forget those whom society continues to consider outcasts, nor lose sight of their human dignity. A man had 2 sons. I found I could connect with each of the 3 characters since I have a father, an elder brother, a younger brother, and 2 sons of my own, in addition to a daughter. Over time, I can empathize with some of my father's reactions when my siblings and I were younger, and how I reacted to my own children's behavior. In addition, I understand how the elder brother felt in certain situations, as well as the younger brother's positions. My experiences thus far have taught me the importance of loving each child, addressing the negative behavior, and appreciating my upbringing. The younger son requests his father to divide up the estate and give to him what's due. Previously, I thought this only meant splitting the money between the 2 sons, but both Nouwen and Keller comment this type of request was also equivalent to wishing his father dead. Keller also writes that upon their father's death, the elder son would receive a double portion of the estate. So the elder son would receive 2/3 and the younger 1/3. Thus, the task of converting and selling 1/3 of all the father's assets, including money, land, and other material items, into cash would be daunting, especially since losing part of your land was to lose a part of yourself. At the age of the younger son, I don't think I would have had the confidence to make such a petition to my father and have it resolved well. Also, if my younger son would make such a request to me, I can only anticipate that my anger towards him and the situation would be more than enough to cover the pain and rejection experienced. Yet the father agrees to divide the estate. Imagine the amount of love he had for his flesh and blood, who wished him dead and cared more about his portion of the estate than his father. After a few days of the estate being divided, the younger son leaves for a distant country and squanders his portion in wild living. In my life story, I moved to Florida after college, which some would consider a distant land of its own, geographically, culturally, and politically. When it came to wild living, many, myself included, limited this activity to drunkenness and promiscuity. Yet are there aspects of our own lives considered wild? Cutting loose from a way of living, thinking, and acting as a child of the light. Some other unanswered questions are: how long was the younger son there? Did the father ever give up on the idea his son was coming back home? We perhaps experience this with loved ones who are no longer actively participating in their faith. What happens next to warrant a change in the younger son's behavior is noteworthy. Yes, he spent all of his inheritance, but the uncontrollable severe famine initiated his change in living. Imagine all the ways his life began to change, first privately and then publicly. He was one of the first to know when his accounts were dried up. Perhaps then close personal friends were next, who could help until the famine required focusing on themselves. Then word got out to his remaining social circles, and they realized he was no longer one of them. According to Nouwen, the younger son became fully aware of his surroundings when nobody around him showed the slightest interest in him. They noticed him only as long as he could be used for their purposes, but when he had no money left to spend, he stopped existing to them. Thankfully, he did not have to go far to secure employment, but what caught my attention is that a local citizen hired him to be a pig farmer. Imagine yourself as a Jewish male, conditioned to avoid pigs at all cost because they are unclean. Not only are you now interacting with them, but you are responsible for feeding them over yourself. Second, his status as an immigrant farm worker reminded me of the migrant farm workers we have in Florida and elsewhere in the United States. Immigration documents may not have mattered then as they do now, but we know his working conditions often left him hungry and envious of the pig's food. It begs us to reflect on how many people live in our country and work in environments that do not pay just wages or have opportunities to find meaning and purpose in their work. More situations in which a person's dignity and humanity are forgotten. Yet the younger son's sense of human dignity was not extinguished. After exhausting all his available options in his new country, he retained enough self-worth to head back home. Rembrandt's painting shows one possession he retained was his sword, a symbol of his noble status. As much as he distanced himself from his father, this was one aspect of his identity he refused to relinquish. He makes it close enough to home where his father recognizes and runs out to meet him. A behavior unheard of and unacceptable for a Jewish head of the family to do. Rembrandt paints this reunion with several noticeable features. First, his son has returned with a shaved head, robbed of one of the marks of his individuality. Next, the clothes worn by the son are underclothes and barely cover his body. The soles of his feet tell of a long and humiliating journey. His sandals are falling apart, and his foot is scarred, bare feet implying poverty or slavery. In contrast are the father's red cloaks, a reflection of his status and dignity. Yet the father overlooks the historical pain caused by this son and instead tries to reintegrate him back into the family as quickly as possible. What better way of doing this than calling for a celebration with the fattened calf as the main entree? Keller writes that during those times, meat was often reserved for special events and parties, most especially the fattened calf. And so, a party ensues to welcome this lost son home. Finally, the elder son is introduced. Arriving at home unaware, a servant, most likely in a joyful mood, updates him on what has taken place since he left for work. Instead of adopting a similar attitude, he becomes enraged. Upon reflection, I can empathize with this anger. Why spend money on someone who unnecessarily harmed the family, both in assets and reputation? Moreover, he already spent his inheritance. So why are we spending more on something that's already been deemed mine? Both Nouwen and Keller comment on general relational dynamics that take place between elder and younger siblings. Nouwen believes elder siblings often express a sense of envy towards their younger siblings because the younger ones are less concerned with pleasing their parents. In finding happiness and fulfillment, Keller writes that the elder son sought moral conformity, what tradition and the community wanted to do, whereas the younger son sought self-discovery, freed to pursue his own goals and live how he wanted to live. Jesus shows that both of these approaches are wrong. But back to the parable. Word gets out to the father that the elder son has arrived home and is refusing to attend the feast. The father goes out to meet him, another behavior unexpected for either a father or the host of a feast to do. The elder son's pride in his moral record prevents him from sharing in the feast and celebrating his brother's return. Amidst the father's pleading, I can only imagine the elder son's response is the result of years of resenting how he was treated by his father and how his younger brother got away with it. He doesn't hold back either, even putting distance between him and his brother by not even referring to him as his brother. Instead, he is this son of yours. In the painting, we see the elder son on the right in red, standing stiffly erect, cold, and with his hands clasped together and close to his chest. There is also a large open space between the elder son and the father. For Nouwen, the elder son's dilemma is to be loved as his father longs to love him, or insist on being loved the way he wants to be loved. The parable leaves the outcome unresolved, but there are several lessons learned. First, both brothers wanted the father's possessions over the father's love. One played by societal norms, whereas the other was more direct about his intentions. Second, instead of viewing ourselves from the lenses of the younger or elder son, we are encouraged to look and respond from the eyes and love of the Father. Our journey back to God remains incomplete as long as we keep God on the outside. However, through embracing forgiveness, reconciliation, and healing, we may return home and celebrate in the generous love of the one who loves us.